Let's be honest, most men drift. We wake up, we scroll, we work, and then we just rinse and repeat. And we know we're softer than we should be. That's why I built the 31-day resilience reset. This is not a devotional. It is a field manual for men ready to stop drifting and start fighting back. So for 31 days, you'll train your spirit, mind, and body with scripture, prayer, and daily challenges that forge real resilience. Go to www.Undaunted.Life/31 days to download this resource for free. That's Undaunted.Life/31 days. Start your reset today. This is Undaunted Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. The one who states his case first seems right until the other comes and examines him. That's Proverbs 18:17. Guys, that's just great advice just in general. But before we get to the main subject matter of today, we've got a lot of ground to cover today, but I just want to be very, very thankful and express my thanks to all of our donors. Guys, we don't have like magic donors behind the scenes giving us hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars. It's guys just like you giving $10 a month, $50 a month, $1,000 one time. Undaunted.life/donate, Undaunted.life/donate. There's also a link in the show notes where you can donate to the Daily Blade, the work that Joby and I do, and you get a tax deductible, that's a tax deductible donation if you want to go that route. And also, if you have not left a review for this show, a 5-star review, 5 stars only, or shared this with a friend, go ahead and do that. So, guys, we got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to cover some stuff in the quick hitters. So, I was actually not going to be recording an episode this week. I had an AMA ready to go for you guys, so we're going to push that to the future. But did want to let you know that we are covering a lot of ground because the news cycle is just not stopping. The news cycle is going insane, and there's obviously a huge topic we need to talk about. But in the quick hitters, we're going to talk about a recent lawsuit judgment that may spell the end of child gender transition surgeries in America. Olympians currently representing the United States expressing disappointment that they are currently representing the United States. Canada threatening its citizens with prison time if they don't participate in the voluntary gun buyback program. Former Uvalde schools police officer acquitted of charges that he failed in his duties to confront a school shooter responsible for murdering 19 elementary school children and 2 teachers. Singer Billie Eilish getting nuked by the Tongva tribe, and then the Washington Post cutting a third of its staff. But before we get to the main topic for today, I do want to cover a couple of other things. So the first thing I want to talk about is the Epstein Files, the Epstein list. So I've been asked a lot. I've gotten a lot of DMs, a lot of emails. Hey, Kyle, when are you going to cover the Epstein Files? Hey, Kyle, when are you going to have someone on the show to talk about the Epstein Files? Hey, Kyle, hey, Kyle, hey, Kyle. And the thing is I know where these requests are coming from because there's so much confusion. And so for a lot of you guys, you'll ask me to kind of like research this stuff, break it down, and try to surmise some usable wisdom that you can have in order to operate on these particular topics. But here's the reason why I haven't covered the Epstein Files and why I'm not going to do so in detail today. The level of information that is out there is only eclipsed by the level of misinformation out there. It would have to become my full-time job, right? Put, all my interviews on the shelf, put the Daily Blade on the shelf, put, being a husband and a father on the shelf, just to start really breaking down some different things on the show. So there was a guy here recently. Let me go look. I'm going to look it up right now because he was on Joe Rogan recently. Hang on. We're doing it live. Yeah, I do say that quote a lot. I should probably figure that out. All right, here we go. Joe Rogan Experience. It was episode 2447, 2447 with Mike Benz. They did almost 3 hours, almost exclusively on the Epstein Files. And then you get to the end of the episode and you're just like, I still don't even fully understand what's happening. So in addition to that podcast, I've listened to other people's episodes. So I've literally listened to hours and hours and hours of stuff on the Epstein Files. And so this is what I want to leave you with in terms of the Epstein Files so that we can move on. I've been guaranteed by people and been told by people that, oh my gosh, there's this evil cabal of millionaires, billionaires, maybe even trillionaires out there that are pedophilic, child sacrificing maniacs. And they're also in control of politicians, entire countries. They're in control of the entertainment industry. They control the weather. I've been told all these different things. So just a small thought experiment for you guys. So if you fall into that camp, right? That you think that there's this evil they out there somewhere that's doing all these things, and Epstein was involved with the they that no one really knows. How can you simultaneously believe that these people are so powerful? Again, running entire politicians as puppets, controlling entire industries, all those things. But they're simultaneously not powerful enough to keep files with their names and videos of them and pictures of them from coming out to the public. I mean, what was it? Thomas Massey yesterday was like, I have a thumb drive that was delivered to me. It has all the names. It has all blah, blah. So they're powerful enough to control everything except for their names getting out. Maybe like that's possible, but I just don't know that that's incredibly likely. So that's not me by any stretch of the imagination excusing what Jeffrey Epstein did or any of his associates. Obviously, the stuff he did was incredibly evil, and short of faith in Christ, he's serving a very awful life sentence in hell, right? Or an eternal sentence in hell right now. But I also want to talk about, we've heard a lot really in the last year from some of them alleged victims of Jeffrey Epstein. Right. So some people have come up and they've had their day in court, and it was seen that their case, their testimony couldn't even be used in court because of so many different variances. But I've just seen these different things where these victims, again, these alleged victims, are doing press conferences, and there were commercials. I think there was one during the Super Bowl. And I'm very confused by this, because you have these again, alleged victims that are putting themselves in front of cameras and putting themselves on television saying, we're not going to be silenced. Like, we need the word to get out. We need the list to get out, blah, blah, all these different things. And I'm just sitting there like, okay, so you are a victim, right? So give us the names. So if this happened to you, and there's these people that everyone would know, celebrities and politicians and powerful people that were involved in your sexual victimization, tell us who they are. And then people are like, well, no, I mean, these people are going to get sued. And, if there's this big, actor that's worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and you've got this gal living paycheck to paycheck, like there's an inequity here. I mean, there's so many different people that would come to her defense and pay for her attorney's fees. I mean, Elon Musk even said that recently. Like, he would pay for anyone's attorney's fees that wants to come out and name names. But they're not naming names. So I don't understand. Like, so there's something, well, there's a lot of things that are incredibly weird about all this, but these, again, alleged victims, because I'm sure some of them are legitimately victims, but other ones, I don't know if they're just trying to get their 15 minutes of fame or their moment to shine or a bag of money, but that's incredibly odd. And then also, this has been pointed out by a lot of people, but perhaps you haven't heard it yet. Isn't it so interesting that Democrats wanted nothing to do with this story until Trump got elected? They were in power, right? They had the White House. They had the House of Representatives. And they didn't really care about the Epstein list. They didn't care about this evil cabal of pedophiles that were, raping girls on an island and boys on an island somewhere. They had, they couldn't be bothered with that information. But Trump gets into office, and all of a sudden it's this big thing. Again, where there's smoke, there's fire. This seems like more of a political firestorm than it is this amazing, incredible, fantastical cover-up. But again, as more easily solidified information and easily defendable information comes out, I will obviously talk about it on the show, but I don't feel like I can talk about it in detail at this moment just because of the bevy of information that's out there. But before we get into the main topic for today, obviously we got to talk about the Super Bowl halftime shows, because again, the Super Bowl, big cultural moment for the United States. Basically, on any given year, that is the largest cultural moment because of the amount of people that are watching it, listening to it. But this year, you basically had the NFL halftime show versus the TPUSA halftime show. Okay, so obviously the NFL halftime show, that's the hegemonic one, and then you've got TPUSA, something that was just thrown out there for this year. And we'll probably continue, but this is the first one. So you got Bad Bunny. So for most of you in this audience, thank God you've never heard of Bad Bunny until he was announced as the Super Bowl halftime show for this year. So I had heard his name before and had never heard any of his music. And to this day, I've still never heard any of his music. I saw some clips of videos of him, when it was announced that he was going to be the Super Bowl halftime show guy. I saw some videos of him from music videos where he's cross-dressing. He's acting very queer. Those are his words, not mine. And so it was one of those things where the crew that I was watching the game with, we didn't want anything to do with that performance. There were a bunch of kids around, a couple dozen kids around, and we couldn't take the chance of a grown man being in a dress or some sort of like LGBTQ nonsense going on, which is the right posture, by the way. You should keep your kids from those types of things. But now we need to talk about the lyrics. Well, actually, we'll talk about the lyrics of the songs that he sang here in a little bit. But there's nothing super overtly crazy to report about the visuals of his performance. He was apparently dressed like a man the entire time. I mean, in terms of the visuals, there was one time where two gay dudes were grinding their wieners together. It was just kind of like a quick clip. So if you like sneezed or looked away for a second, you missed it. But yeah, there were a couple of gay dudes that were rubbing their crotches together. So there was that. But essentially the entire performance was in Spanish. Spanish. A language that most Americans don't understand nor speak. Actual Americans, that is, of course. So a Spanish-speaking artist doing a performance in Spanish isn't newsworthy, nor should it be. But in this case, it actually is because of the setting of the performance, which is the Super Bowl, which just so happens to be the biggest cultural event in America every year, as I've already said. And it's the culminating game of the season for the National Football League, which is the biggest professional sports league in America, with football being the most popular spectator sport in America. And this year is the 250th birthday of our country. And the biggest cultural event of the year will be an event where the halftime performance honored a bunch of Central and South American countries and Puerto Rico, an American territory. It's not even its own country, but no honor for this country, and it's done in a language that isn't English. So you may have seen the clips, or maybe you were even one of the unfortunate souls that actually watched that performance. But remember when they started walking all the flags out and then he started like naming all these Central and South American countries. But where was all the American flags? Because the thing is about people in all those other countries, all those people are either wanting to legally immigrate here or more likely illegally immigrate here. But they don't want to leave their pride for their country that sucks so bad that they want to leave it there. They want to bring that with them, but they want the largesse of America. So yes, it is at least a bit strange that the NFL would choose to have a controversial, explicit, queer, Spanish-speaking artist to do the halftime show. But again, they know what they're doing, right? Because they know you either are going to love it because you're depraved or you're going to hate it. But either way, you're going to pay attention and you're going to talk about it as I am right now. But if you ask the NFL, they really want to break into the Latin American market, okay? I mean, that's part of this whole plan to display Latin American culture as if we needed that in American football. But I just have to ask what should be an obvious question at this point. Do you really think that people in Central and South America are going to start watching American football because you had Bad Bunny perform the halftime show? I mean, guys, let's be real. If J-Lo and Shakira didn't pull that off with their performance from however many years ago, I don't think Bad Bunny can, but I digress. But really, to the NFL, is that what you think? Do you really think that you can pander to a group of people in a way that will make them forget football and start watching and paying attention to football? I mean, do they honestly think that having Bad Bunny go up on stage and do, whatever it is that he does is going to get someone in, Guatemala or Colombia or Argentina to watch a Thursday night game between the New York Jets and the Tennessee Titans? Is that something that you think is going to happen? Because it seems a little foolhardy to me. But because the entire performance was in Spanish, a lot of people miss this. We need to talk about the lyrics to the songs that he sang. Again, most of the people watching it had no idea what was being said or sung or whatever you would call what Bad Bunny was doing into a microphone. But I did a little bit of research, and let's just say it's egregious, okay? Now, I know some of you listen to this in the car or in the gym with your kiddos around or something like that. Explicit language warning coming. I am going to be reading Bad Bunny lyrics, the lyrics that he sang in front of the entire world at the Super Bowl, okay? So here is your warning if you want to skip ahead or you want to pause this and listen to it later, okay? There you go. I've extended out the warning. You have been sufficiently warned. So here is one of the songs. I don't know how to pronounce this word, but it's Safera. And so I'm going to go ahead and read the lyrics of the song here. Again, he sang them in Spanish, but if they were in English, they would have sounded like this. She came ready already, ready to brush together. She sucks my lollipop. She gets on her knees. Hey, how dare you, mommy, to come without panties? Yes, so that your panties get wet, get horny and versatile. More slutty than Betty Boop. The one who got horny, mommy, was you. I stay killing with the you. Pussy with dick, dick with ass, push it in. Your tits rubbing my nipples, push it in. I don't know why I haven't seen the pussy, but let's go to bed to F you in panties. Okay? That's something he sang in front of the entire world. Another song he sang was Titi Mi Pregunto, and this is some lyrics from that song. Here are some. Let the ones I already effed smile. Today I have one, tomorrow another. The one from Barcelona that came by plane and says that my dick is fire. So that was sung in front of the entire world. Another song called Party. Here's some lyrics from that. She wants to grind and get high. I'll smack that ass. Whenever you want, ready for you to get horny. And you will still want it. Sit on top of my dick. I've made your pussy sentimental, and your panties are wet. And so, guys, that's just a sampling. That's just a sampling of some of the words. So if you let your kids watch that filth of a halftime show, that's what you expose them to. So good job, Dad. But now let's talk about the TP USA one. So obviously there was their initial announcement. It was after Bad Bunny was announced. They came out and said, this is ridiculous. We don't want, to expose our families to this. So we're going to do our own. And then there were some initial names that were kind of bandied about. We kind of thought they were going to go like a Christian, way. And so we heard about Forrest Frank and Brandon Lake and Cody Asbury and some of those guys. But then it was like weeks and weeks, if not months of silence. There was just silence, so much so that I was like, hey, I don't even know that TPUSA is actually going to follow through with this. And then shortly before the Super Bowl, they announced the lineup. So it was Lee Brice, who I had never heard of before, Gabby Barrett, who I had never heard of before, a guy named Brantley Gilbert, who I had seen pictures of, but I'd never heard his music, and then Kid Rock. So boy, oh boy, was my 13-year-old self super pumped about that. And so just to be honest, after seeing that lineup, I was not like overwhelmed and pumped and excited about the lineup, but I was like, hey, I'm not going to watch Bad Bunny. I'll be at a Super Bowl party with some friends. So certainly we will go ahead and give it a shot. So when it got to the halftime show, it started off with Brantley Gilbert. And so I'm sure there are some Brantley Gilbert fans in my audience, but I just got to say, for me, I'm just not really into the whole like kind of pseudo tough guy, dude, bro, America country music thing. It's just it's kind of like contemporary Christian music, guys. It's just when it hits my ears, it just doesn't agree with my palate. It may be your thing. It's just not my thing. So I was kind of turned off from the beginning, but hey, I'm here. I'm at this party with a lot of my friends, a lot of my foxhole guys. And, so all the guys are outside on the porch watching, all the gals were inside and the kids were off, playing and having a good time. So, and it was during his set, actually, I don't know, he played 2 songs or something like that. And I don't know this to be true, but it's almost assured at this point that the whole thing wasn't live, which is it kind of defeats the purpose of doing something to compete with a live performance at the actual Super Bowl. So I thought that was a little weird. And then there was a gal that came on named Gabby Barrett. I thought she was fantastic. Again, I had never heard of this person before, and it was kind of hard to hear because, it was kind of loud on the porch. But you could just tell that the girl could sing. She could actually sing. Like she wasn't hiding behind her band or hiding behind, her microphone with brass knuckles on it or something like that, whatever that's about. But I thought she was spectacular. So hopefully Gabby gets a nice little bump from this. Then it went to a guy named Lee Brice. Again, I'd never heard of him before. Yikes. Ouch. It's just not really my sound, not really my thing. If you're a Lee Brice fan, great. God bless Lee Brice. But it was around that time when Lee Brice was doing his thing that I posted on Instagram. Is there a third option for the halftime show? Because I was just like, goodness gracious, just wasn't really enjoying myself. And that was really, if I'm being honest, that was around the time when most of the people in my crew kind of checked out. And again, this is a bunch of guys from Oklahoma that love America. And this is kind of like the America thing, right? And all of us are just like, ugh. Like we're all like looking at our wives and they're looking at us and everyone's like, golly, this needs to be over soon. Then we got to Kid Rock. So you can hear the entrance music for Ba With Ta Ba. And I leaned over to one of my buddies and I go, hey, wouldn't it be awesome if he came out in a mink coat like he did at, Woodstock back in the day? And so he pops up on screen, like literally like pops up out of the ground and he's wearing jorts and like a cut off mink coat. And I was just like, all right, well, this is kind of funny. But you could tell because you could tell he recorded a live version of Ba With Ta Ba, but then they were playing it back because the lip sync track was off. Like it was out of whack, right? And so it's at one point you can see his mouth's moving, but the audio track is somewhere else. Again, it could have been live and something just got messed up or whatever. There was a lag, but didn't quite pull that off. So that was a little strange. And then there was this very beautiful, but seemingly oddly timed and out of place song played by a violinist and a cellist. And at this point, we're all like, what in the world are we watching? What is this? We went from ba to ba to these people playing this, it was admittedly a very, very beautiful, I think it was even a Christian hymn. If not, it was just a beautiful song. And then they announced somebody named Robert Ritchie, which sounded familiar, but eventually you can kind of realize when this person looks up that it was actually Kid Rock, because Robert Ritchie is his real given name. So he was singing Till You Can't, which is a Cody Johnson song, which automatically made me think, well, why didn't they just get Cody Johnson? I mean, maybe they tried or something like that, but it was interesting. I didn't really know Robert Ritchie was going to be covering a Kojo song. But if you were able to make it all the way to the end of this rather underwhelming show, you get a surprise additional verse to Till You Can't. So not in the original by Kojo, where Kid Rock sings, again, Robert Ritchie sings, "You can give your life to Jesus and he can give you a second chance." Okay? To which I would say amen and amen. But man, did you have to slog your way through a bunch of unfortunate stuff to get there? Okay? Now, it wasn't until afterwards, I didn't really realize this until Monday, that, because I was in my head, I was like, man, you sang the lyrics of Ba with Ba. I mean, that first verse, you're talking about topless dancers and people that are addicted to drugs and, people that do violence. Like it's a gathering of unfortunate folks in that first verse. And then he does this Jesus song and it's like, okay, there's an inequity here. But what was supposed to happen, how they built that is like, okay, here are the people, these depraved people that everyone knows are depraved, right? Look at the first verse of Ba with Ba. And then you have this beautiful transition, and then you get a song that basically talks about Jesus and the gospel. Okay? So it was an actual beautiful thing that they set up, because it's like it went from depravity to the foot of the cross on Golgotha, right? But a bunch of people, me included, just flat out missed that. I mean, at least initially, but I would say there's a lot of people even to this day that are pretty confused about that transition. I mean, no one in my crew got that. Like, we're all Christians. We all go to the same church. No one really got that, okay? And so I feel like TPUSA, like, big fan. I know they're going to keep doing this. They're going to keep getting better at it. But there was just a lot of stuff before the main message, which kind of got lost. And also, Kid Rock, Robert Ritchie, was still singing. The show was still going, and the second half was kicking off. And so the guys in my group, we turned it back over to the game. And so we didn't even get to the full end of the performance. And so obviously it's the first time you do something like that. They spent a lot of money on it. They tried their best, and I think it will get better. So I think in the future there will be an honest to goodness comparison between, hey, did you watch the Super Bowl halftime show or the TPUSA halftime show, which, I think is a good thing. So a lot of people have done this, and I know we're going a little bit long, and we still have to get to the main topic. We're going to talk about the Trump stuff here in a second. But a lot of people have basically said, hey, this is what should have happened at the halftime show. And there's maybe some advice for TPUSA going forward. Here's the thing about the halftime show. As long as it's controlled, of the NFL one, as long as it's controlled by Rock Nation and Jay-Z, we're not going to basically get anything that I'm about to say, because it's going to be the same kind of junky filth that we've gotten over the last few years. But I want to go ahead and say this. I would love to see an actual band at the NFL halftime show for a change, because I looked up the last 20 Super Bowl halftime shows, and there were only 5 bands out of the 20. So Maroon 5 in 2019, Coldplay in 2016, I guess you can call them a band. The Who in 2010, Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band, awful, 2009, and then Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers in 2008. So all the others have been artists. But the thing that it seemed like a huge miss for the NFL here is they were doing the halftime show, they were doing the Super Bowl in the Bay Area. So if you wanted to do a band in the Bay Area, how about we do some Bay Area legends? Metallica, right? That's their area. They're one of the biggest acts in the history of music, one of the best-selling acts in the history of music. They just happen to play heavy metal. Why not get Metallica? I'm still open to that. But if you don't want to do a band, okay, then how about we get someone that's an actual musician, not just somebody, doing a seizure and talking on stage through auto-tune? I mean, I thought about someone like John Mayer. I'm a huge fan of John Mayer. The guy is an absolutely spectacular guitarist and singer-songwriter. I mean, in my opinion, other than Metallica, I think that John Mayer might have a shot at matching the best Super Bowl halftime performance ever. And that was from Prince in 2007. If you haven't watched it, you don't know what I mean, go watch it, then you will know what I mean. I won't hear any other opinions. And look, if the NFL ever felt like they wanted to stop, again, it's not going to happen with Rock Nation, but if they wanted to stop ignoring the majority of the people that consume their product, how about a country show, right? Telling me that the NFL couldn't get George Strait to come do a country show? I mean, then you kind of have that next tier of guys that are going to be in that George Strait, stratosphere probably at some point. I mean, Chris Stapleton, the owner of the greatest national anthem in history, right? How about Cody Johnson, Morgan Wallen, Luke Combs? I mean, Carrie Underwood. I mean, you could do a really amazing country music show, and yeah, it's going to get made fun of by like hip hop people on Instagram, but who cares? I think that would be enormous. But this also goes for the TPUSA event as well. If you want to do a Christian show, just go for it. Because again, the initial reports were that TPUSA was going to do like a pro-America, but explicitly Christian show by, typically Christian artists. So if you're going to do that, just do it. Do a Brandon Lake, Forrest Frank, Phil Wickham, Corey Asbury, kind of a show. So anyway, that's my feedback on the Super Bowl halftime show and the TPUSA halftime show, but we need to get into the main topic for today. Hey guys, real quick. I know a lot of you train for very specific things. So maybe you've got a mud race coming up, a mountain hunt, a 5K, or maybe you just want to keep up with your kids or you just don't want to let the old man in. But for a lot of you guys, whether you're working out at the Globo gym or even your garage gym, you get there and you just don't know exactly what to do. And so you just kind of settle for the same old workout routine, maybe some bench press, bicep curls, a walk on the treadmill, and you know you're not really getting the most out of your workout plan. And I want you guys to stop wasting time at the gym. No more settling. It's time for you guys to get a guide to help you reach your fitness goals. And that's why I want to remind you about my good friends at Mountain Tough. Mountain Tough is a fitness and mental toughness app developed by military special operators and mountain hunters that's becoming a global movement for building mentally tough athletes on and off the mountain. Mountain Tough is a native app ready to be downloaded on all platforms, so that includes iPhone, Android, Apple TV, Roku, and there's more. Once you sign up and download the app or access the website, you immediately have access to hundreds of exercise programs and literally thousands of workout videos, thousands. So that includes structured hybrid strength and endurance programs, daily workouts, the full exercise library, mental toughness training, the Mountain Tough community, and accountability. And you can use it all on the go, online or offline, no matter where you decide to train. So if you're just getting started, that's great. They have programs for beginners. If you have minimal or no gear where you train, that's not a factor. They have minimal gear and body weight programs. And guys, if you're wanting to get into or maintain elite level fitness, they've got you covered with programs for top tier athletes too. And for a limited time, Mountain Tough is extending Undaunted Lifers like you an incredible offer. Go to mountaintough.com. That's MTNtough.com and enter the code Kyle when you sign up for a monthly plan to receive your first month free after your 14-day trial. So that's 6 weeks free to make sure this is for you. I'm sure it will be. That is 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app in the world. So stop wasting time. It's time to get real fitness results. Let my friends at Mountain Tough guide the way. Again, go to MTNtough. That's mountaintough.com. Promo code Kyle. All right. Oh boy, am I about to step in it. Here goes nothing. So you might have heard old President Trump had something posted, or he posted on his Truth Social account, and we're still not 100% sure if it was him or somebody else, caused a little bit of a stir, if you will. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, consider yourself blessed, but allow me to bring you up to speed. Just before midnight on Thursday of last week, this is February the 5th, there was a 62-second video posted on Donald Trump's official Truth Social account. So the main part of the video was, it's kind of documentary style, but it was about the 2020 election and the supposed fraud and the fixing and the stealing of the election and all that, which is not what anyone really cares about anymore. And that's not what anyone's focused on right now. It's pretty much baked into the cake at this point that Trump will never let go that, the 2020 election was stolen thing. So even though he had his day in court and provided no substantial evidence to prove his case, but let's just keep working through this story. It wasn't the first 60 seconds of the video talking about the supposed stolen election from 2020 that anyone is talking about. The entire world and everyone in it apparently is talking about a 1 to 2 second clip that was somehow mushed onto or into the very end of the video. So it was clearly not part of the main video, but if you have not seen the clip, let's go ahead and watch it here.
Initiated by a court order, the Michigan investigation team obtained forensic access to a DS200 tabulator, the machine that counts the votes. A Telit 4G wireless chip manufactured in Taiwan was discovered embedded into the motherboard. The voting machine tapes clearly indicate modem engagement and transmission of election data. Some of the anomalies that we noticed in the 2020 general elections, that 5 key states all stopped counting at a certain time in these key battleground states. These were all where the software, Dominion machines, ES&S machines were used, the Smartmatic, the GEMS software. So when the vote stopped counting, and this has been noted in other countries as well, President Trump was significantly ahead. When reporting and counting resumed, there was a massive spike occurred that favored Joe Biden.
Well, there you go. That's the thing that happened. So for those of you that are not in the know and are just listening to this, so the video clip is from a documentary style video by patriotnewsoutlet.com. And then, like I said, right at the end, inexplicably, there's a short clip showing an AI video of former President Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle, depicted as primates. So it looks like Michelle was a gorilla and Barack was an orangutan. So the clip is set to the song The Lion Sleeps Tonight, and there's a subtle but obvious watermark on the video that says, and I'm not sure how he pronounces this, but it's Xeris_X, so it's Xeris_X. So the person's name is Xerius, whatever. So, and boom, right there. We supposedly have the smoking gun, right? This post on President Trump's Truth Social account finally, once and for all, proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that Donald Trump is indeed a terrible but despicable racist, right? I mean, this is all the evidence that we need, right? Well, if you take a look at the internet, that's the conclusion you come to. I mean, people left, right, and center were absolutely apoplectic at this, right? So the people on the left were always going to react this way. We obviously knew that. But even people on the right, you had politicians that are currently Republicans serving in the Senate or the House coming out decrying this. There was an immediate, overwhelming reaction from a bunch of Christian pastors here in this country, and I'm going to address them more directly here in a bit. But all of this does lead to a pretty obvious question, if we're being honest. Where in the world did that short clip of the Obamas even originate? Well, to remind you, the watermark on the video is Xerius_X. So if you go to X and look that name up, it brings up a profile with at the moment around 54,000 followers. It's an anonymous account, and it's an AI video and kind of meme account that seems to be incredibly pro-Trump, pro-MAGA. And so is this a real person that is super MAGA and really likes Trump, or is this some sort of foreign actor that is trying to sow discord in our country? We don't really know, but it's an very, very important question that no one seems to be really interested in at the moment, unfortunately. But the clip of the Obamas is just a small part of a 55-second video, which I found, which I will play now. So let's go ahead and go to the clip here.
In the jungle, the mighty jungle, the lion sleeps tonight. In the jungle, the quiet jungle, the lion sleeps tonight.
All right, so that's where that little Obama clip came from. So the entire point of this video is twofold. It's to make Trump seem like the leader in the room and for prominent Democrats to look like fools. And so if you're only watching this or if you're only listening to this, rather, you have Donald Trump, who's depicted as a lion, right? So he's, the king. Then you have Barack and Michelle Obama as apes or primates. Joe Biden is a baboon. You have Kamala Harris, she's a tortoise. Hillary Clinton is a warthog, hilarious. AOC is a donkey, also hilarious. Chuck Schumer's a zebra. Hakeem Jeffries, who's the House Minority Leader, he's a meerkat. You have Zohran Mamdani, who's a hyena. Whoopi Goldberg is a hippopotamus, and there was one other person I couldn't figure out who they were. They were a pig or something like that. But the video is meant to be funny and edgy and derisive and offensive, and that's, seemingly the entire point. But the reality is, guys, is there is a history, a very, very dark and sinful history of depicting black people as apes. So a lot of people actually, at least colloquially, think that it started with Charles Darwin with the work that he did, who, he actually somewhat accidentally laid the groundwork for scientific racism, but it actually goes back centuries before him. So it actually goes back, according to my research, to about the 16th century. There was a Spanish author named Antonio de Torquemada. In 1570, he wrote a story about a woman being raped by an ape, which created a hybrid offspring, which supposedly led to the rise of black people. So there's plenty of other examples throughout history of these types of things. So yes, it is offensive to many for anyone to be depicted as an animal, right? Even in a satire video. But specifically superimposing the faces of two black people onto apes carries a much more pointed and offensive connotation. We just have to be really honest about that. And is that what Zarias, the creator of this video, meant to do? Did he mean to do that? I mean, we can't know for sure, but if I were to venture a guess, I would say yes. Clearly, this person knew what they were doing. While at the same time, if we're being honest, there are two other black people in this video that are not depicted as apes. Kamala Harris was a tortoise, and Whoopi Goldberg was a whatever she was, and Hakeem Jeffries is another one, was depicted as a meerkat. So who knows what the person that made this video, who knows what their motivation was, but I certainly don't believe that it's an accident. But regardless of the person's motivation, there is the reality that we have to deal with, which is that the sitting president of the United States of America shared a video which included a short clip of two prominent black Democrats as apes. So what did the Trump administration have to say about it? So, well, initially they tried to just kind of, wave their hand over it and pretend like it was nothing, like nothing was going on. They called it fake outrage and fake news. But as the backlash grew, and it grew immediately, the story from the administration did change a little bit. So they said that Trump saw the video, but he only watched part of it, that he sent the link to the social team or someone on his staff to post it on his True Social forum. Maybe that happened, maybe that didn't, who knows? But they said that the social team or the individual staffer too did not watch the entire video. They posted it not knowing the Obama ape clip was on there, and that's pretty much it. So Trump himself, while answering questions from a reporter while on Air Force One, he said as much. He said he didn't watch the whole thing. He said it should have been caught by the social team. He said it was a bad picture. He said that they decided to take the video down, which of course is the right call. So a reporter then asked him directly if he condemns the image, and without hesitation, Trump said that yes, indeed, he does condemn it. But he didn't apologize for it, which, guys, is par for the course for him. He doesn't really apologize for anything. I think we all know that at this point. I think he should have tried to reach out to the Obamas to apologize for the post, which, again, thinking in terms of geopolitics or whatever, the Obamas would have rejected a phone call from Trump, because if they accepted the phone call from Trump and accepted an apology from Trump, it would have put an end to the whole kerfuffle, right? Which would actually help Trump and the Republicans. But I think Trump should have at least made a show of reaching out to the Obamas. So that should be that, though. But nothing is that simple. So here we are talking about it. So even after the explanation from the Trump administration, everyone rushed to condemn and express their alarm and outrage over the video. And everyone that had expressed that outrage before Trump had anything to say about it, they just doubled and tripled down on their initial statements, which, is not particularly shocking. But this entire situation comes down to you, everybody, falling on one of two sides. So side one is that Trump saw the entire video. He knew that the clip of the Obamas as apes was in there, and he liked it. So he wanted the whole world to see it. And he directed his social media team to post the video as is, or he did it himself, which clearly makes him a vicious racist. And this is just the latest example of it, but it is the example, right? That's side one. Now we have side two. Trump saw a video talking about his favorite subject in the world, which is that the 2020 election was stolen. He watched the first part of the video, probably 20 or 30 seconds of it, but he didn't watch the entire thing. He shared the video, or had his staffer share the video. They too did not watch the entire video, and they posted it at the direction of the president. Those are the two sides. Those are the only two plausible options. So which side do you fall on? Well, I can speak for myself. I think that side 2 is most likely and most plausible by a mile. Okay? Is side 1 possible? Yes, it certainly is. But if you believe side 1, then you think that Donald Trump is one of, if not the most stupid major political party politicians in the history of the United States of America, and that he has essentially no political acumen whatsoever. And I just got to tell you, if you believe that, I think you need some help. I don't think you're playing with a full deck. You see, because you can hate Donald Trump, and there's plenty of people that do. You can hate his policies, some of which I do. You can hate the things that he says, some of which I do. You can hate his pettiness, which I certainly do. But to deny his political prowess and skill is ridiculous. I mean, guys, the man completed the greatest presidential political comeback in United States history by winning the 2024 general election, and he won the 2016 general election. And in both elections, he had the entire mainstream media apparatus and the entire culture fighting tooth and nail against him. And yet somehow, some way, he won. Fair and square, both times. Now, you may not like him, but the guy has a knack for politics. And that's like completely undeniable. So let's just move forward and assume that side 2 is the side that aligns with reality, which is what I believe happened, that he didn't watch the entire video. Then I need to just tell you something. We need to be people that can hold multiple thoughts simultaneously in tension. Because all of the following things can be true at once. Trump is a talented and gifted politician. He will never let go of the claim that the 2020 election was stolen. He or his staff foolishly and recklessly posted a video that Trump saw on the internet without watching the entire video. And if it was his staff that posted it, his staff foolishly and recklessly posted a video from his official True Social account without watching the entire video. Trump is not a racist, and this is an enormous mistake for the Trump administration, and it will have dire consequences for the Republican Party. All those things can be true. And guys, really, I just got to tell you, I think all of those 6 boxes, they're checked. I think they all are true. They can be wrong, they might be wrong, but I think it's very unlikely. So where does that leave us? Well, I think it leaves us with a question that I pose as the title of this podcast. Can a single social post sink Trump's presidency? And a lot of you may not like this, but the answer is a resounding yes. Yes, it could. And this is the main reason why. Truth is not nearly as important as narrative. The truth is not nearly as important as narrative. And in this case, the spin has already happened. And for just about everybody, the narrative has been solidified in their brains. Trump is a racist and unfit to be president. So, need I remind you about the fine people on both sides hoax, right? Some of you know what I'm talking about, but if you don't, in August of Trump's first year as president, this would have been in 2017, there was a rally to protest the removal of a Robert E. Lee statue, and the rally was in Charlottesville, Virginia. So a bunch of white nationalists and neo-Nazis showed up. So did a bunch of leftist protesters, so there was a bit of a powder keg there. Violence broke out, obviously, and tragically, a woman named Heather Heyer was killed when a man drove his car into the crowd, an absolute tragedy. A few days after this went down, Trump did a press conference where he addressed what happened. So I'm actually going to put the entire C-SPAN video in the show notes. So I can't show the whole thing here because I don't have the rights, but you can watch the entire thing from C-SPAN. And I chose C-SPAN because they don't edit any of the footage. It's just raw footage, from beginning to end. So before the quote that's in question, the fine people on both sides thing, Trump talked about why he waited for more of the facts to come out before making a full statement, which is always a good idea for people to keep in mind, including you. He talked about how the guy in the car was a horrible murderer. He talked about how it's a slippery slope when you start talking about taking down Robert E. Lee statues. He wondered aloud if Thomas Jefferson and George Washington were next, which, of course, they were always next. He talked about race relations in the country. He also talked about the different groups that were represented in the crowd and in the occurrences of that day. So there were the people that were peacefully protesting the removal of the historical statue. There were white nationalists and neo-Nazis that were violently protesting, which he condemns. And then there were leftist agitators that were violently protesting, which he condemns. So now let's get to the most important part of the presser. So it starts around the 18-minute and 20-second mark of the C-SPAN video. So if you're clicking on the show notes and you want to watch the entire thing, the part that I'm about to play starts around 18:20. So let's go to the clip here.
On both sides, sir, you said there was hatred, there was violence on both sides.
Well, I do think there's blame. Yes, I think there's blame on both sides. You look at both sides. I think there's blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
Kill the person. Heather hired
Charlottesville. They showed up in Charlottesville to protest. Excuse me. They didn't put themselves down as you, and you had some very bad people in that group, but you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name.
All right, so there it is. That is the infamous "fine people on both sides" quote that the mainstream media and the left has weaponized against Donald Trump and really all Republicans until this day. So if we're being honest, guys, in a vacuum, that quote sounds pretty terrible. I mean, all by itself, the quote sounds like he's saying that there were some very fine people specifically on the side of the white nationalists and neo-Nazis. Like in the group of white nationalists and neo-Nazis, that there were some very fine people, okay? But as I will remind you, for as long as I have breath in my lungs and a microphone to speak into, context is everything. Context is everything. So I already gave you some context about Trump was saying leading up to the now infamous quote, right? And you have the entire link to the entire video in the show notes to prove that I'm not spinning or lying. But now I'm going to show you the quote immediately following the infamous "fine people on both sides" quote. So there isn't a gap between this, okay? So I'm literally starting the video right back from where he left off, okay? So let's go back to the video. On the C-SPAN video, it starts around the 19-minute mark.
White nationalists?
Well, no, George Washington was a slave owner. Was George Washington a slave owner? So will George Washington now lose his status? Are we going to take down, excuse me, are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner. Now, we're going to take down his statue. So you know what? It's fine. You're changing history, you're changing culture, and you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally. But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits, and with the helmets, and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
And there it is. It's the key quote, which absolutely and completely topples the mainstream media and leftist and liberal narrative on what Trump actually said during that press conference. So actually read it again here. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. I'll read it again for emphasis. I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists because they should be condemned totally. So is Trump saying that there were fine people that were also neo-Nazis and white nationalists? Nope, he didn't. He literally drew a line in the sand between the people that were protesting the removal of the Robert E. Lee statue. Okay? There were the fine people that were peacefully protesting the removal of the statue because they disagreed with it. And then there were white nationalists and neo-Nazis that were not peacefully protesting the removal of the statue. And Trump outright said that they should be, and I quote again, condemned totally. So it's about as unambiguous as it gets. So here's the thing about the hoax. People still believe wholeheartedly that Trump said there were very fine people that were white nationalists and neo-Nazis, and they refuse to be swayed off of that opinion. Now, most of them, I would venture to guess, and likely even a lot of you listening to this right now, never heard the follow-up quote before. You never even heard it. Why? Because the media didn't want you to hear it. Why not? Because it would have made it impossible for them to gin up this fake outrage, which is exactly what it is. And I got to give it up to them. It certainly worked. Because there are a bunch of ignorant people walking this planet that still think that Donald Trump said that white nationalists and neo-Nazis were fine people. Which gets back to my main point. Truth is not nearly as important as narrative. And just like how the mainstream media and the left worked overtime to make sure that you thought that Donald Trump was saying nice things about white nationalists and neo-Nazis, the mainstream media and left is working overtime right now to convince you that Donald Trump is a vicious racist that purposefully posted a video depicting Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as apes, and that he knew that clip was at the end of that video about election fraud. And you know what? As I sit here just kind of reading the tea leaves, it looks like it's going to work. It looks like it's going to work. And if it works, it basically dooms the remainder of Trump's second term in office, especially if Republicans lose both the House and the Senate later this year with the midterm elections. And you can be guaranteed that the Democratic Party and the mainstream media, but I repeat myself, are going to repeat this ad nauseum. And everyone running for a Senate seat or a House seat or a governor's mansion or anything like that is going to use this situation to their advantage. Which takes me back to one of the statements that I believe to be true about this whole thing. This is an enormous mistake for the Trump administration. And I think it will have dire consequences for the Republican Party. And the reason is because the margin for error for Trump and the Republicans, especially this election cycle, it's razor thin. Razor thin. I mean, they literally cannot afford for mistakes like this to happen. But they let this one slip through and it will likely cost them dearly. And I mean, here's the thing. It could have been any number of random images or videos at the end of the video, right? Have you thought about that? Like, there could have been, a 2-second clip of a murder video. Like, it could have been porn. Like, it could have been child porn. Like, can you imagine? Like, Donald Trump's watching this video about election fraud. He watches 20 seconds of it. He sends it off to his staff. They don't watch it either, and they just post it. And there's some sort of, sexual assault video on there. I mean, Trump and his staff, tighten the ship. Come on. But there's, been this question kind of floating around. Perhaps you've been asked it. There are Trump voters right now that are being asked the question, do you regret voting for Trump now? Because you should. Because I'm someone that's on the internet all day, and I think you should. To which you should and I will respond, of course not. Of course I don't regret voting for Donald Trump. If Kamala Harris and Tim Walz had been elected, the decay of society would have continued apace from what Biden set in motion, or really what Obama set in motion. So I lament the fact that Trump did something so furiously stupid, while at the same time, if I could go back in time knowing that he was going to do that ahead of time, I would vote for him again. Because I need to remind you, when you're voting for a candidate, especially when the choice is between the Republican nominee for president and the Democratic nominee for president, your vote doesn't mean that you 100% agree with everything that candidate will do or has ever done. Because duh. Your vote doesn't mean that you will 100% align with every policy, position, and prescription that candidate has ever or will ever propose. That's not how any of this works. A vote simply means that you think that that candidate aligns more with your morality and your choices, and that they will slow the decay of our society more than the other guy or gal. So I really like the way that Pastor Josh Howerton puts it. So he said this a lot from the pulpit, but he and I were talking via text this weekend, and so I'm actually just going to read the text to you. A vote is not a sacrament. A sacrament is something holy that you cannot mix any impurity into. Some well-meaning but naive Christians treat their vote like a sacrament and think that they are sinning if they vote for someone who has any impurity in them or their policies. But even the most basic common sense makes it clear. That's not what a vote is. A vote is simply a choice about the best available path forward. Sermon on the Mount. We are the salt of the earth. The church's job is to preserve from decay. So when a Christian votes, they are simply asking, which set of policies best preserve society from decay? To which I would say, amen and amen. I agree with him. I agree with me. But now I need to talk about pastors. I have a message for the pastors that raced to social media to join the pile-on against Trump. So I was actually talking to a very prominent person within Christendom here recently. No, it was not Joby. No, it was not Chandler. But you would know this person if I mentioned them. But it is a private conversation, so we'll keep it private. He said that this whole situation with Trump right now, that it's the posting of the Black Square 2.0 test. And that most pastors have failed it miserably. So what does he mean by that? Well, back in 2020, when a career criminal and derelict named George Floyd overdosed and died while in police custody, do y'all remember what everyone seemed to post on social media all at the same time? Yep, the Black Square. So people from all walks of life posted a black square with the hashtag BLM or hashtag Black Lives Matter, and most of them did it as part of hashtag Blackout Tuesday, which was on June the 2nd of 2020 after George Floyd overdosed and died. They did this to signal to the public and to their followers that they were against what they thought happened to George Floyd and that they supported the statement Black Lives Matter. Okay? Because these people thought that George Floyd was murdered by a white police officer because George Floyd was black. And they thought that when you said Black Lives Matter, that you were just talking about a statement. But there are some problems with those two beliefs. As the evidence came out, it concluded that George Floyd was not murdered by a racist white cop. In fact, the prosecution in that case didn't even allege that in court. And they could have. The federal government, there was no hate crime legislation that was brought against this person, right? Against this white police officer. And the toxicology report showed that George Floyd had in his system at his time of death 3 times the amount of fentanyl to kill a person, norfentanyl, 4-ANPP, which is a precursor and metabolite of fentanyl, methamphetamine, cannabinoids, cotinine, which is a metabolite of nicotine, morphine, which could have come from heroin, and caffeine. That was all in his system. Oh yeah, and he had COVID. So no, he was not asphyxiated to death from the cop's shin being across his shoulders and neck. If you've ever been choked out or if you've ever been, choked unconscious or something like that, you kind of have an idea of what that takes. I could put my shin across your neck and shoulders for the rest of the weekend and you'll never pass out. The autopsy found 0 evidence of asphyxiation and 0 damage to George Floyd's neck and trachea area. Okay? He did not choke to death. So the overwhelming evidence is that George Floyd's heart exploded because of the bevy of drugs in his system that he chose to ingest. One doctor even said around this time that if they had found George Floyd dead in his apartment with that toxicology report, it would have been the easiest open and shut case ever of overdose. And now to Black Lives Matter. I think every person with a functioning brain and even base level morality would agree with the statement Black Lives Matter. Of course they do. Black lives matter, brown lives matter, yellow lives matter, white lives matter, unborn lives matter. Whatever thing you want to put in that, they all matter because they're all made in the image of God. But that isn't actually what Black Lives Matter or BLM actually stands for. Because Black Lives Matter is not a statement, it's an organization. And that organization has a purpose. So this is according to the What We Believe section of the BLM website. This was before people noticed it and before BLM scrubbed it. But here are the things that they believe. Eradicating white supremacy and building local power to intervene in state and vigilante violence against black communities. Broadening family and community structures. We disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectivism, care for one another, especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. This was framed as rejecting patriarchal norms that force mothers into double shifts and promoting communal child rearing and support networks. Queer affirming and inclusive spaces. We foster a queer affirming network. When we gather, we do so with the intention of freeing ourselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking. It is also for dismantling cisgender privilege and embracing diverse gender identities and expressions. And then family-friendly and anti-patriarchal practices. making spaces inclusive for parents and children, dismantling patriarchal requirements that limit women's public participation, and centering Black joy, healing, and collective liberation, global Black family and comrade-based organizing, describing itself as part of a global Black family that engages comrades across contexts with an emphasis on love, mutual support, and revolutionary change, and intersectional focus, explicitly centering Black women, queer, trans, and gender nonconforming people as leaders in the movement while addressing overlapping oppressions, racism, sexism, homophobia, etc. That's what BLM, the organization, believes. And the founders of BLM, namely Alicia Garza and Patrisse Cullors, have said openly that they are trained Marxists. And Patrisse Cullors, her mentor is a guy named Eric Mann, who's a former member of the Weather Underground, which you may have heard of. It's a far-left group that advocated violent, direct action against supposed U.S. imperialism and racism. And they killed people. And oh boy, did a bunch of prominent Christian figures get caught up in this. So here's just a short list of the people that posted the black square with the hashtag BLM or whatever. Joel Osteen, my favorite, Andy Stanley, Craig Rochelle, Stephen Furtick, Tony Evans, Carl Lentz, Christine Kane, Brian Houston, Joyce Meyer, Kari Jobe, and Toby Mack. And that's just a sampling. And let's actually focus a little bit on Craig Rochelle of Life Church. So I used to attend his church for over a decade, and he has a lot of influence in my city and my state and within Christendom, so he's going to get some very special attention from me. After George Floyd overdosed and died in police custody, and one day after Craig posted the black square on social media, he held a special midweek service via Life Church focused on prayer, lament, and intercession because of racism in America. Racism. You know, the thing that had nothing at all to do with why George Floyd died? And he was joined by his wife, Amy, and pastors Herbert and Tiffany Cooper from People's Church in Oklahoma City. And I'm just taking a stab in the dark here, but I'm assuming he chose Herbert Cooper because Cooper is black. So the event was structured worship and prayer and, to ask God to reveal what the church could do in order to take action against racism. Racism. The thing that has nothing at all to do with why George Floyd died. And then the Sunday following this special midweek event, Craig paused his sermon series to do a one-off sermon called Racism and the Responsibility of the Church. Racism again, the thing that has nothing at all to do with why George Floyd died. So Pastor Craig emphasized that if one part of the body suffers, the whole body suffers. And in the sermon, he argued that the church cannot remain silent or neutral in the face of injustice, because he had already figured out that it was an injustice that happened to George Floyd that day. And there was a call to action in the sermon where he challenged the congregation to do the work. Do the work. I feel like I've heard someone say that before. I think it was a college professor with a nose ring and green hair. But he wanted people to do the work of listening and learning rather than just offering surface level sympathy. So then Craig's good buddy Stephen Furtick hosted Craig and T.D. Jakes for a high-profile discussion at Furtick's church called A Conversation on Race, Justice, and the Church. So, highlighting Craig here, he didn't just casually get into all of this. Like, he jumped in with both feet, he doubled and tripled down, and he brought his entire church, his entire flock, and all of his fans with him. And even after all the dust settled on this situation, to my knowledge, none of them expressed regret over posting the black square, and none of them have deleted their posts supporting Black Lives Matter, the organization. And guys, I don't have a ton of grace inside my body. You might be shocked to learn that, but I would have grace for any of these people if they had done something later. So let's take Craig, right? Because some of you think I'm picking on him, poor guy. But let's take Craig. Let's say a year goes by and he's like, geez, seems like George Floyd, he's dead because of his own decisions, which is unfortunate. It's not tragic because he made those own decisions, but we should feel bad for his family, not so much for him. We can hope that he had put his faith in Christ before he died. Like we can hope all those things. But man, it kind of became revealed that Black Lives Matter was a big time financial grift. It was a money laundering scheme. It was a real estate acquisition scheme. this is a communist organization. That doesn't align with biblical ethic. This is a Marxist organization. That doesn't align with the biblical ethic. Craig could come out and either do a video or a, some sort of a post and say, hey, I'm leaving the black square post up, but I know a whole lot more now about the situation than I did back then. It's obvious that, I would have never supported the Black Lives Matter movement if I knew it was going to be such a godless Marxist one, which he could have surmised from the beginning if he had done, 2 seconds of research. But you come out and you just say, hey, my bad. I shouldn't have done that. I'll be better in the future. I think everybody would have been like, all right, okay, Craig. 95% of people have been like, cool. Hey, we all make mistakes. Here's, your mea culpa. Here's your mulligan. No big deal. I mean, a lot of pastors have done that with COVID, right? There were pastors that shut down their churches. They were terrified, blah, blah. Come to find out, this wasn't the thing that it was made out to be. COVID-19 wasn't the thing that it was made out to be. We should have kept the churches open. We should have kept the schools open. I'm completely okay with people saying, I was scared. I was confused. I didn't know what to do. I listened to the government and the government lied to me. I'm sorry. I should have been a better leader. I should have been a better shepherd. My bad. I think most people would be okay with that. Okay. But apparently, prominent Christian figures in our modern day culture learned nothing from the George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, Black Square situations. Nothing. Apparently, none of them think that it's okay or advisable to take a breath, wait for the dust to settle, and for their emotions to settle before making a public statement or a public declaration of some kind. Because social media has been wall to wall since last week with prominent Christian figures condemning President Trump as a racist who's morally unfit to guide our nation. And some of them have even lamented that he beat Kamala Harris to win back the White House, which inherently means that those people would be A-okay if Kamala Harris was in office, which would have been the most godless administration perhaps in the entire history of this country. There would have been a further crackdown on religious rights, specifically for Christians. It would have been the most pro-baby sacrifice, aka abortion administration in United States history. The transing of the kids would have continued apace, just to name a few things. But hey, Trump posted a video without watching the entire thing, so these geniuses conclude that he's a vicious racist that shouldn't be in office. But I said earlier that I actually have a message for these pastors, and I do. And it's actually a message really to the pastors and their entire flocks. If you didn't say a damn thing publicly after Charlie Kirk was martyred, and didn't say a damn thing publicly after leftist protesters stormed an evangelical church service in Minnesota here recently, but you piped up immediately to decry Donald Trump as a racist after that video was posted that he obviously didn't fully watch, spare me your performative outrage. I don't want to hear it. All your outrage shows me is that you are easily manipulated, easily swayed by your emotions, and easily puppeted. That you get a little bit of stimuli at the very beginning, and then you create this entire worldview and philosophy. And guess what? The writer of Hebrews says, you will have to give an account someday for how you shepherded your flock. And what you've taught people in the last week is that it is completely okay to not wait for the truth to come out. It is completely okay to be swayed by media narrative and the things that you see on social media. It is completely okay to cut off people, even in your congregation, that disagree with you because you are the most righteous. Because you have surmised what is most appropriate in this situation. That you know exactly what to do and you are leading your flock in that way. But you're a puppet. You're a puppet. Again, many things can be true at once. It can be insanely stupid that the Trump administration did this. And also, Trump is clearly not a racist. But you don't have the ability to hold two ideas in tension. This isn't about black, white, and gray. This is about holding things in tension. Let's actually revisit the list of the prominent Christians that I mentioned earlier that posted the black square. So Joel Osteen, Andy Stanley, Craig Rochelle, Stephen Furtick, Tony Evans, Carl Lentz, Christine Kane, Brian Houston, Joyce Meyer, Kari Jobe, and Toby Mack. You know what all these people have in common? They didn't have a damn thing to say about Charlie and not a damn thing to say about the Minnesota church being stormed by leftists. There was no midweek prayer services, no interruption to their current sermons or tours that they were on. No special events were held. They didn't say we need to learn from other communities and really have a conversation. Not a single solitary damn thing. Not a single word. But I'm supposed to take you seriously about your opinion about what Trump said or what Trump posted. Really? You have no moral authority. I don't care how many books you sell. I don't care how many campuses you have. I don't care how many people are following you. You do not have moral authority here. You have a seared conscience. I mean, just imagine. You had nothing to say when one of the most prominent living Christians was shot in the neck in front of thousands of people. Nothing to say. That Sunday following Charlie Kirk's murder on September the 10th of last year, that Sunday was perhaps, as sociologists have thought, the most attendance at church services across the board in history. But you couldn't be bothered. You just kept your sermon series going. You had your guest preacher come in and preach. You didn't take any time to acknowledge what had happened, to acknowledge the fear and anxiety that was being felt by Christians that thought that, if this happened to Charlie Kirk, could I be next? This growing violence that's happening from the left, people on the left that are actually celebrating that this Christian father and husband was murdered in front of everybody. You had nothing to say. Nothing to say. An evil evangelical Acts 29 church, right, in Minnesota. You have leftist protesters in Don Lemon storm it, terrify the children and the congregants. Again, try that in a small town, but they terrify these individuals. They basically get the entire service to screech to a halt. It's a miracle no one was hurt or killed in that physically, even though they were certainly harmed emotionally. Nothing to say. Nothing to say. But you want me to follow you down the primrose path to hell by condemning everything else that you see going wrong. I'm sorry, that's not how any of this works. So I'm giving this message to you guys in my audience because you have a pastor. You attend a church. What did they talk about the Sunday after Charlie Kirk died? If you go back and remember what I said, that if your pastor didn't even make mention of it, perhaps you're not at the right church. People are like, oh, well, the church shouldn't be political. I'm sorry. Someone who talked about politics was murdered mainly because of his Christian faith. That's martyrdom. And if your pastor couldn't find it in his heart or in his schedule to mention it, that's maybe a hint to you. If your pastor got spun up by all the nonsense going around in 2020, so much that they posted the black square, or they acquiesced to the culture that said certainly George Floyd experienced some sort of injustice which does not align with reality or the facts, perhaps that's a hint to you as to how easily your shepherd can be manipulated by culture. Need I remind you that the culture we live in is atheistic. It's not God-honoring. And it doesn't look for truth. Because if you look for truth, you would honor God. And you wouldn't be an atheist, of course. So guys, keep all that in mind. Hey guys, real quick. You've probably heard the phrase, ignorance is bliss, right? Well, some of you are ignorant about where the beef that you buy at the grocery store comes from and what it took to get to you. So that single package of grocery store ground beef can contain meat from over 100 different cows, sometimes from multiple countries. And if one of those cows was sick or mishandled in some way, it's mixed right into your dinner. So most people don't realize that some ground beef at the store isn't just beef either. It's scraps and trimmings chemically treated with ammonia to kill bacteria and then blended in to bulk up the weight of what you're buying. It's legal, it's cheap, and it's on the plates of Americans all over the country, usually without the customer ever knowing. So even if you buy what you think is a nice roast or steak, it's been passed from feedlot to processor to packaging plant, handled by people who will never eat it, and raised by farmers who will never see the end product. And in that journey, the cattle were likely fattened on hormone-packed feed, pumped full of antibiotics just to survive cramped feedlot conditions, and processed alongside meat from hundreds of other animals. And by the time it hits your grill, you don't know whose cow it was, what it was fed, or what's actually in it. I don't want you or your family eating low quality, jacked up beef. That's why I want you to use the official beef delivery partner of Undaunted Life, Primal Beef. So Primal Beef is a cattle operation owned and operated by Sean Glass. He's a retired Navy SEAL that partnered with Jocko Willink to launch Primal Beef. So what makes Primal Beef different from other beef delivery companies? It's a combo of the following. All American Black Angus cattle. And the beef comes from one farm, and that's in Virginia's Shenandoah Valley. The beef is all natural, no hormones ever, no mRNA ever. And after slaughter, the entire carcass is dry aged, then hand cut by artisan butchers, and then flash frozen to ensure that it maintains tenderness, marbling, and flavor. And here's another cool thing. For every box sold, Primal Beef donates meat directly to a member of America's Special Operations Forces through the C4 Foundation. So you can take pride in knowing that your purchase will help put literal food on the table for America's finest warriors. If you're still on the fence, it's probably because you've been eating too much soy, drying your emo tears with your bangs, and you've forgotten what real food tastes like. Primal Beef can help with that. Try Primal Beef out today by going to primalbeef.com. That's primalbeef.com. Use the promo code Kyle to get $25 off your first order. Again, that's primalbeef.com. Promo code Kyle to get $25 off your first order. All right, guys, let's get to the quick hitters. A recent lawsuit judgment that may spell the end of child gender transitions and the surgeries here in America. So this is according to Benjamin Ryan on X, and he also has a Substack, and this was on January the 30th. Breaking. First detransitioner to take a medical malpractice lawsuit to trial wins a $2 million judgment. So Fox Varian sued her Westchester, New York area psychologist and plastic surgeon for the gender transition mastectomy she got at 16. I was the only reporter to attend the entire 3-week historic trial. The entire case file was put under seal when the trial started, although I obtained all those documents before they were sealed, and all the transcripts from the trial are also under seal. The riveting trial was sparsely attended, and there was only one other reporter at the trial, and he only attended for part of it, as I observed, and took few notes. So my own hundreds of pages of notes from the trial will likely remain the only way for the public to learn about the finer details of what transpired, possibly ever, or until an appeal, should that happen. Okay, so it's unfortunate that there's only one person that covered this, because then we have no one to compare it to and we only have a single source of information. But if you read this person's information that they put out on X or Substack, you can see that this is a huge deal. This is enormous. So this, right to the big takeaway on this one, this is the beginning of the end of the trans industry for children, for sure. Because the trans revolutionaries are not as loud as they once were. The left is not featuring trans people as much as they want to in their advertisements or their political commercials or anything like that. But the hospitals, the surgeons and doctors that have taken, they have been part of this barbarism, they've been put on notice. Because, Matt Walsh making a documentary and a bunch of Republicans screaming about how evil and awful and satanic this all is, that's not going to stop the hospitals and surgeons from doctors from taking the money. Like, okay, yeah, you can scream and be mad and maybe even hold up a sign outside my office, but I'm just going to keep cashing these checks, right? I'm keep stacking these bills. And so, but now, if the hospitals and surgeons and doctors who are making money hand over fist, because you don't just do these surgeries and you're good to go, you're mangling people. And so the reason why they do these surgeries is because of the amount of follow-up appointments that they're having to do and the amount of money that these hospital networks can keep stealing from insurance and things like that for doing these barbaric procedures. But if you're going to be cost millions and millions of dollars per person in lawsuits, that just ain't going to work. It ain't going to do it. So the trans industry for children feels like it's dying, which is fantastic. I think we should be expanding this out to trans surgery should not be a thing in total, because there's some Republicans and people on the right that are like, hey, if you're an adult and you want to, get breast implants as a man or, chop your penis off or I don't know, if you're a female and you want to shave off part of your arm and have them sew it on top of your penis to make it look, or on top of your vagina to make it look like a penis or whatever. If you want to do any of that stuff, hey, you're an adult, do whatever you want. That's the libertarian strain that doesn't align with morality, which is the problem with libertarianism overall, is it doesn't have a base level morality other than just do whatever you want. The government can't tell you what to do, right? It's like, okay, well, things are more complicated than that, Ron Swanson. And so ultimately in this type of thing, I think it is a tremendous thing that a jury, especially a jury in New York, I mean, my goodness, to be able to find this doctor and this psychologist liable for taking advantage of this impressionable and obviously mentally ill young lady and chopping off her breast when she was 16 years old. And again, the judgment was for $2 million. That's not all going to that gal, but even if it did, even if it was 10 times that, it's not enough. It's not enough. But I hope that every single hospital, surgeon, and doctor and psychologist that had a hand in any of this nonsense, I hope that they are all responsible, or they're all held accountable and responsible for all this. Our next quick hitter, Olympians currently representing the United States, expressing disappointment that they're currently representing the United States. So their Winter Olympics started last week. Not sure if anyone really cares, but here we are. But for some reason, United States athletes are being asked political questions at their press conferences. They're not being asked about, anything sports related, as if I was really waiting to solidify my opinions about what is going on in this country until a freestyle skier gave me their input. But let's actually go to a clip of a couple of these freestyle skiers giving their opinions at a press conference.
I feel heartbroken about what's happened in the United States when, I'm pretty sure you're referencing ICE and some of the protests and things like that. I think that as a country, we need to focus on respecting everybody's rights and making sure that we're treating our citizens as well as anybody with love and respect. And I hope that when people look at athletes compete in the Olympics, they realize that that's the America that we're trying to represent.
It brings up mixed emotions to represent the U.S. right now, I think. It's a little hard. There's obviously a lot going on that I'm not the biggest fan of, and I think a lot of people aren't. If it aligns with my moral values, I feel like I'm representing it. Just because I'm wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything that's going on in the U.S. So yeah, I just kind of want to do it for my friends and my family and the people that support me getting here.
Okay, so the first guy in the video is a freestyle skier named Chris Lillis. So he thinks that we need to love and respect our citizens in this country, as he's talking about it in another country. But I missed the part where he said that we need to love and respect our citizens by keeping violent, criminal, illegal aliens out of our communities. People that are murdering Americans, raping Americans, stealing from Americans. Ugh. Chris Lillis, I seem to miss the part where you drew that connection, which is a little strange. And then we have Hunter Hess, also a freestyle skier and scholar, apparently. He has mixed emotions. Getting paid to do a dumb sport that only is relevant once every 4 years, and it's mildly relevant at that, while wearing an American flag plastered on his chest. He's got some mixed emotions, you guys. Then he hits us with, well, if it aligns with my moral values, I feel like I'm representing it. Okay. Well, just like in everything, just like what I talked about when you vote for a political candidate, you're not co-signing anything they've ever said or anything they ever will say, anything they've ever done or anything they will do in the future. That's not what that is. But when this is your job to represent your country at the Olympics, that's what you signed up for. And then he hits us with just because I'm wearing the flag doesn't mean I represent everything that is going on in the United States. Okay, well, also breaking news from Hunter Hess, water is wet and snow is cold. Because duh, you're wearing the flag because you're representing your country. Now, Trump responded to this saying that it's hard to root for a guy like that, a guy like Hunter Hess, which is 100% true, of course, because the Olympics ultimately are about two things: athletic excellence and representing your country. That's what the Olympics are. So the Olympic trials process pretty much takes care of number one, because it weeds out the inferior athletes, usually. But it's basically impossible to root for someone that completely disregards number two, which is representing their country. So let's take America out of it. Let's say somebody was up there and they're representing the UK at the Olympics, and they have nothing good to say about the United Kingdom. Okay, well, if you're an English person, right? Well, some of the few people there that are actually still English, but if you're an English person, wouldn't it be hard to support that guy? Hey, this guy's supposed to be representing my country. I love my country, but he doesn't seem to. Like, you can't really root for that guy. And this also kind of sheds a light, and a lot of people pointed this out, about how liberals and leftists feel about this country. So basically, if Democrats and leftists are in office and doing Democrat and leftist things, they're all about it. They love this country. Yeah, America, sort of. Right? It's tempered, but it's there. But if Republicans are in office and doing Republican things, they don't like it. I remember back when George W. Bush was president, when I was in college, I heard some people say, well, he's not my president. And I was looking around like, wait a minute, is there a like, am I on a hidden camera show? Wait, are you not a citizen of the United States? Well, yeah, I'm a citizen. Okay, well, easy flowchart time. Citizen of the United States. George W. Bush is your president, you doofus. What are you talking about? Like, I didn't like it when Barack Obama was in office for 8 years, but he was my president. I certainly didn't like it when Joe Biden was president, but as I was talking to a guy yesterday, you still pray for that guy. You want that guy to be the best president possible. Because again, you want to slow the decay of society, which will lead to more human flourishing, right? But big takeaway on this one. Okay, great. To the U.S. athletes complaining about being U.S. athletes, I hear you. I understand your obviously well thought out concerns. So here's my offer. You get a one-time, one-way ticket to any country in the world, and you will immediately have full citizenship in that country. So where would you like to go? Where you want to go? Oh, I'm sorry. There's no other place you'd rather live than this horrible country that you have mixed emotions about representing? Oh, you don't want to go anywhere else? You actually want to continue to live in the greatest country in the history of civilization? Oh, that's interesting. And also, by the way, in a country seemingly full of Hunter Hesses, be a Tamara Mensa stock. So I want to show you this to remind you. I think I showed this after it happened, but this was her reaction after she won the women's 65 kilogram freestyle wrestling gold medal at the 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which was held in 2021. Let's go to the clip here.
How does it feel to represent your country like this?
It feels amazing. I love representing the U.S. I freaking love living there. I love it. And I'm so happy I get to represent USA.
I mean, look at that. And guys, she's supposed to be one of the oppressed ones, right? Because she is a woman and she's black. So intersectionally speaking, she's way more oppressed than Hunter Hess. And she's brimming with so much joy. Not that she just won the gold medal, which is spectacular and amazing, but because she loves this country and all of her flaws. And this country has some flaws, but she loves her country and loves representing it nonetheless. So be more like her. All right, next quick hitter here. Canada threatening its citizens with prison time if they don't participate in the voluntary gun buyback program. This is according to the Daily Wire on February the 4th. Hundreds of thousands of Canadians could face prison time if they do not turn in their newly prohibited guns under supposedly voluntary gun buyback program that is testing the strength of Canada's bureaucratic regime. Since May 2020, the Canadian government has attempted to institute a massive assault-style firearms compensation program that will reportedly trade cash for prohibited guns. If Canadians do not turn in prohibited guns by October 2026, they could face up to 5 years in prison. The program has faced massive pushback from provincial leaders and gun rights organizations who say it will only disarm law-abiding Canadians. Which, of course it will only punish law-abiding firearms owners, because law-abiders would be the only ones that would even think about comporting with this law to begin with. And that's basically what all these laws are meant to do. And of course, the leftist Canadian government is playing word games. It literally cannot be a voluntary program if you throw the people in prison if they don't comply, right? It literally is a confiscation if the government officials end up taking firearms away from law-abiding Canadians, ironically, at the threat of a gun. So big takeaway here. It's actually really hard to feel bad for you, Canada. You voted for this. You voted for your current and future oppression from your own government. And I know there's some guys in Canada that are in my audience. That's our second biggest country, I think, in terms of this show. You're screaming at your speakers right now. No, not me. But enough of your countrymen and women, enough of them voted to have exactly what's taking place to take place. They have bought the lie that, hey, we don't even need guns. We have the local police. We have Mounties. We have the military. We don't need to be able to protect ourselves. But need I remind you what happened in Australia? They had a mass shooting. They did gun confiscations across the country, which didn't end gun violence, by the way, because that's not how any of this works. So criminals don't care about laws. That's what makes them criminals by definition. And then COVID happens. And the government said, get in this camp. Don't go outside. Don't go to the beach. And certainly don't talk back. And COVID seemed to be a dry run for something even more intense in the future. And what do Australians have to fight back? Law-abiding Australians have to fight back? Nothing. Nothing. Surfboards, rugby balls, boomerangs. Well, good luck. Canada, you're the next one up. All right, next quick hitter here. Former Uvalde Schools police officer is acquitted of charges that he failed in his duties to confront a school shooter responsible for murdering 19 elementary school children and 2 teachers. This is according to the Texas Tribune on January the 21st. A former police officer was acquitted Wednesday evening of charges that he failed in his duties to confront the gunman at Uvalde, Texas Elementary School during the critical opening minutes of what would become one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. Jurors deliberated for more than 7 hours before finding former Uvalde Schools police officer Adrian Gonzalez, 52, not guilty in the first trial over the hesitant law enforcement response to the attack that killed 19 children and 2 teachers at Robb Elementary School on May the 22nd of 2022. The trial was a rare case in the United States of an officer facing criminal charges on accusations of failing to stop a crime and protect lives. Gonzalez had faced the possibility of up to 2 years in prison if he had been convicted. At least 370 law enforcement officers ultimately rushed to the school, where 77 minutes passed before a tactical team finally entered the classroom to confront and kill the gunman. Gonzalez was one of just 2 officers indicted, angering some victims' families who had said they wanted more officers held accountable for the law enforcement response. Gonzalez had been charged with 29 counts of child abandonment and endangerment, each count representing the 19 students who were killed and 10 others who were injured. During the trial, jurors heard the medical examiner describe the fatal wounds that some of the children were shot more than a dozen times. Several parents of victims described sending their children to school for an awards ceremony and the panic that ensued as the attack unfolded. Again, just an absolutely horrific thing it'll never heal until Christ comes back. But before I give you my big takeaway on this one, I do need to lay out the obvious and remind you of some things. I have never been a law enforcement officer. I do not know what it's like. I've also never been shot at. I do not know what it's like. But I do want to read to you the official oath of office. Okay? This is the word-for-word text of the oath as prescribed in Article 16, Section 1 of the Texas Constitution for law enforcement officers. I, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will faithfully execute the duties of the office of Peace Officer of the State of Texas and the City of Uvalde, and will to the best of my ability preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution and laws of the United States and of this state, so help me God. Then there's the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics. So this is from the Uvalde Police Department, and like most Texas agencies, they adopt the standard Code of Ethics. So the very first sentence explicitly addresses the duty to protect. So here it is. As a law enforcement officer, my fundamental duty is to serve the community, to safeguard lives and property, to protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, and the peaceful against violence or disorder. So, big takeaway. If you are not willing to lose your life in order to safeguard the lives of the peaceful against violence, then don't take the job. Don't take the job. Adrian Gonzalez is guilty. He was not found guilty, but he is guilty. Because as a law enforcement officer, you are not called to think of your life cheaply, but you are actually called to think of the lives of those you protect as higher and of more value than your life. It's what he raised his right hand and said out loud before he got that job. So if you're currently in law enforcement and you care about your life more than the lives of the innocent people in the community, especially elementary school children, please quit. Please quit. And if you're not going to quit, please change your mindset. Please make an agreement with yourself. Please come to the realization that one day you might have to give up your life for someone else, because that is the oath that you took before God. Again, at the end of that oath is so help me God, and God is watching. And I wish there were more men that had taken that oath seriously that day when all those children and those teachers were murdered. All right, next quick hitter here. Singer Billie Eilish getting nuked by the Tongva tribe. Okay, so a modern day thing, a phenomenon, whether it's the Grammys or the Emmys or whatever award show, is you go up there, you're probably wearing a pin with kind of the cause du jour. So last year it was, Israel and Gaza. This year it's Ice Out and all the different things. And then we got Billie Eilish, okay? So let's go ahead and say I think she won an award for best album or best song or something like that of the year. And so she's up on stage, she's giving her acceptance speech, and then she says this.
No one is illegal on stolen land. Yeah, it's just really hard to know what to say and what to do right now. And I feel really hopeful in this room, and I feel like we just need to keep fighting and speaking up and protesting, and our voices really do matter, and the people matter, and I say sorry.
So powerful, so brave. But hey, she's depressed and edgy and angsty and artistic, so she's probably right? So before we get to my absolute favorite part about this story, let's just break down the logic of the first thing that she said. No one is illegal on stolen land. You can see that she was really proud of herself for saying these words and then immediately had absolutely nothing to say. She was just trying to figure out something else to say. But she's making several errors just in her first sentence. So she's making a category error because illegal applies to actions or legal status, not to existence. She's making an equivocation fallacy. She's using the word illegal to mean two different things. So legal status and moral and natural rights. So she's equivocating those things. She's committing the genetic fallacy. So she's arguing that current laws are not valid because of the circumstances of how the origin of the land took place. But as many have pointed out, all of the current United States territory was either settled, purchased, or conquered, which also describes basically all of the land occupied by any country ever across the entire globe. She's also committing a false equivalence. She's equating historical territorial conquest with modern immigration law violations. Also, she's committing the self-refuting argument, because if the land was truly stolen, as she claims, then you have to also uphold that borders and immigration laws are actually a thing. But Billie Eilish is a leftist, so she doesn't believe in borders or immigration law. And if there's no such thing as borders, there's no such thing as stolen land. And all that's very, very interesting and ironic. And there are several other things that she did wrong, even in one sentence. It's incredible. But we'll leave it there because I want to actually dovetail that last point into my favorite part of the story. This is according to the New York Post on February the 3rd. It's so great. The Native American tribe that owns the land under Billie Eilish's multi-million-dollar Los Angeles mansion said celebrities should explicitly reference the tribes if they want to use them to virtue signal. The Tongva tribe confirmed the Bad Guy singer's $3 million home does sit on its ancestral land after the 24-year-old used her Grammys acceptance speech to rail against ICE and insist that no one is illegal on stolen land. The indigenous inhabitants of the Los Angeles basin, known as the First Angelinos, said they appreciate Eilish's sentiment, but noted that the performer hasn't contacted them directly and insisted that next time she explicitly reference them. Eilish has not contacted our tribe directly regarding her property. We do value the instance when public figures provide visibility to the true history of this country, a Tongva spokesman told the Daily Mail. It is our hope that in the future discussions, the tribe can explicitly be referenced to ensure the public understands that the greater Los Angeles basin remains Gabrielino Tongva territory, the spokesperson said. So big takeaway on this one. If leftists like Billie Eilish were to give up their property, to give the property back to the American Indian tribes that lay claim to those lands, I would actually take them a lot more seriously. I would. I mean, they'd still be wrong on so many fronts, but I would at least take their complaints more seriously, their land acknowledgments more seriously. But then each of these leftists would get both barrels of reality right to the face, because the immediate question that they would have to try and answer would be, to whom do I owe this land to exactly? Because as has been pointed out, Where did the Tongva tribe get the land from? So did they just pop into existence in that valley and it was their land and it's always been their land until the evil white man came in and settled it or conquered it or purchased it? Oh, the Tongva tribe took it from another tribe who took it from another ancient people group and another ancient people group, and who the heck knows who laid the claim to the land initially, which is exactly how it goes. I mean, think about me, like I have Choctaw Indian blood in my system. Imagine if I were to try to figure out to which land belongs to the Choctaw. It'd be impossible. Because the Choctaw, raped, pillaged, stole land and property from people, and it happened to us as well. So who does the land go to? Which is why all of this unravels. It's ridiculous that she said what she said, but she is in a room full of like a bunch of clapping penguins that don't really know the difference between any of these things, but it goes along with their political priors, so they're just going to go along with it. All right, last quick hitter here. The Washington Post cutting a third of its staff. According to Politico on February the 4th, the Washington Post told employees Wednesday that it will begin sweeping layoffs, the latest blow to the storied newspaper under billionaire owner Jeff Bezos, confirming weeks of speculation about drastic newsroom cuts. So real quick, I'll get back to the story here in a second, but let's pause because language matters. Even in the beginning here, there's a lot of coded language. I mean, they called it a storied newspaper. So there's an immediate implication that the people that report for them are untouchable because it's so storied, right? Also, they make sure to mention Jeff Bezos is a billionaire. More on that in a second. Let's get back to the article. We have grappled with financial challenges for some time. They have affected us in multiple rounds of cost cuts and buyouts, along with periodic constraints on other kinds of spending, the Post executive editor Matt Murray said in a newsroom note seen by Politico, stating that the reductions would impact nearly all news departments. The size and scope of the layoffs are not immediately clear, but hundreds of Post employees could lose their jobs, according to Post reporters, with sections including sports, metro, books, and international coverage hit particularly hard. The latest round of layoffs cap a tumultuous 18 months for the Post, which Bezos purchased in 2013. The newspaper has undergone significant leadership changes and was roiled by a decision from Bezos and publisher Will Lewis to scrap a planned editorial that would have endorsed then Vice President Kamala Harris over now President Donald Trump shortly before the November 2024 elections. So the reaction from this, obviously, leftists and liberals, they love the Washington Post. They love their coverage. They love the bend of their politics, so they didn't like this. But then you had all these people whining like, oh, journalism is dying and journalists are being targeted and somehow Trump's involved and probably the Jews are involved or something like that. But guys, the stat that matters is that since 2023, just since 2023, WAPO has lost around $177 million. $177 million. Okay? But then a lot of people were looking at even the losses. They were acknowledging the losses of the Washington Post. They were looking at approximately what Washington Post employees are paid. And then they were looking at Bezos' net worth as a reason why none of this had to happen. Oh, Jeff Bezos could pay for the entire Washington Post to do everything that it's still doing, and it would only take this much of his net worth. Which, right to my big takeaway on this one, it is simply astounding that more people don't even have a basic level of understanding as it pertains to economics. Okay? Do you know one of the main reasons why Jeff Bezos is one of, if not the richest person in the world, right? Near the top of the list? Because he doesn't hold on to losers. He doesn't continue holding on to investments that are bleeding money, because that's stupid. Because the Washington Post is not a charity. It is a business. And I tell people this all the time, young guys, if I'm mentoring them, they're getting a job. Maybe it's their first big boy job out of school. They're going to make $45,000 or something like that. Okay, great. I tell them, you have to bring that organization at least $45,000 worth of value or you're not essential. Because if you bring $10,000 worth of value, they should probably cut you. And if you bring significantly more than $45,000 worth of value, at some point you should be able to negotiate a raise. But it's based on the value you bring in, not the value you perceive in yourself. So a lot of these journalists think that they are entitled to a job because they really like their work. They really like writing and they really like doing their thing and all that. To which I would say, so? And so you like your job, you want to keep it. Congratulations, welcome to everyone that's ever had a job that they liked. But you are not entitled to that job. And when you refer to Jeff Bezos' net worth, that is his net worth if he were to liquidate all of his assets. But you only realize those gains when you liquidate them. And so his cash flow and net worth would be deeply affected if he continued to fund things that were not also cash flowing, that were not in the black, that were constantly in the red. And so these people will probably land on their feet. Maybe some of them won't. Maybe some of them should have never been journalists because they were never journalists to begin with. But at the end of the day, that's capitalism. That's economics. All right, guys, that'll do it for today. Before we go, we are going to do a quick resilience boost. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Don't forget, you can donate to Undaunted.Life, Undaunted.Life/donate. And if you need a tax-deductible donation, you can donate to the Daily Blade. Go to newhorizonsfoundation.com, search the Daily Blade. And then I've got the links to everything else I talked about in the main subjects and the quick hitters. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.